Hello all, myself Sudha Rani, working as Assistant Professor in Mlritm, Hyderabad. My session today will be on conservation of biodiversity. In my last sessions, I have been dealing with different values of biodiversity, indirectly like the importance of biodiversity, what is biodiversity, levels of biodiversity, threats to biodiversity, then values of biodiversity. In my today's session, I'll be dealing with different aspects of or different strategies of conservation of biodiversity, because in my last classes I was dealing with the importance. So because the biodiversity is so important to us, our life sustenance, so hence it has to be protected or it has to be conserved. So there are some strategies like how the biodiversity is being conserved or protected. So conservation of biodiversity, an introduction. It is to preserve and protect the species in their habitat or outside their habitat. So the main intention is protection. Give protection to the species, especially the species which are endangered. So I have mentioned about red list, where we have endangered species, or we have the list of extinct species, endangered species, especially the concentration is on endangered species, how protection can be given to them. Then to maintain essential ecological processes so that there is no ecological imbalance created. So to create some ecological balance, so that is to essential ecological processes are to be maintained. So that is what really what we look forward in conservation of biodiversity. To use the species and ecosystem sustainability without exploiting them. So to use them without exploiting them, and creation of natural parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, etc. to preserve flora and fauna. So preservation is our main intention. So how to preserve it or how to conserve it, that is what I'm going to deal in my today's session. Then conservation of genetic biodiversity by establishing zoos and botanical gardens, nurseries, etc. So these are conservation strategies. Next, proper planning of land use and other natural resources affecting the biodiversity. So exact planning and how these strategies have been implemented in different parts of the world, especially in our country, that is what I'm going to deal in today's session. By prohibiting hunting and poaching of animals. Poaching means the dealing with the animal, smuggling of animal products. So by prohibiting hunting and poaching of animals, fishing, etc., beyond the productive capacity of ecosystem. So this is something which is maintained here by prohibiting all this over exploitation of resources. Next, by regulation through laws, acts and legislative controls such as India's Forest Act, Endangered Species Act, etc. Conservation of, there are acts. So one of the act is, Indian Forest Act and Endangered Species Act. So Forest Conservation Act. So all this act thereby emphasize on the protection or the conservation of biodiversity, thereby protecting ourselves, or we are just seeing that our life is being much maintained and there is a balance created on this particular ecosystem. So why conservation is required? So these are all the issues. That is why we are going for conservation. So because of its importance. Next. So there are there are some approaches to biodiversity, especially there are two approaches of biodiversity. The first one is in situ conservation, second one ex situ conservation. So first one in situ and second one ex situ. So in situ conservation, we have protected areas, national park, sanctuary, biosphere reserves. So these three comes under protected areas which are included in situ conservation. So biosphere reserves can be terrestrial or they can be marine also. So that is in situ conservation. Then in ex situ conservation, we have something called as seed bank, cryopreservation, botanical gardens, zoological parks, aquaria, arboretum, and home gardens, sacred plants. All this comes under ex situ conservation of biodiversity. So two strategies of biodiversity, in situ and ex situ. What is this exactly? What do we mean by in situ conservation of biodiversity and ex situ conservation of biodiversity? That I'm going to show in the next slide. Now, ex situ conservation of biodiversity. What is this? It refers to the conservation of components of biodiversity outside the natural habitats. So the species or the products are being brought outside their natural habitats. For example, zoos, museums, gene banks, botanical gardens, arboretums, etc. From all these are the examples for ex situ conservation of biodiversity. Like it refers to the conservation of components of biodiversity outside their natural habitats. So that we mean by ex situ. Now, it is used for threatened endangered species to avoid their extinction, also known as captive conservation. So, threatened species or which are on the verge of getting extinct, endangered species, all the species are brought to one particular place outside their habitat and they are protected. Additional protection is given to them, otherwise, they get extinct. So, it is also called as captive conservation. So, captive conservation or ex situ conservation, the same meaning. Okay, so in these examples are the very famous examples, the zoo, arboretums, or we are calling the botanical gardens, aquariums, all this comes under ex situ conservation of biodiversity. Now, in situ conservation of biodiversity, conservation of ecosystems and natural habitats, including maintenance and recovery of viable populations of species in their natural habitats. So the species are protected in their natural habitats. We call it in situ conservation of biodiversity. So two strategies of biodiversity, in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. As you can see the classification given in the previous slide, in situ is in their habitats. In their own natural habitats, if you are giving protection to them or if you are conserving them, it is called in situ conservation, where you can see national park is one example, sanctuary, biosphere reserve, it can be terrestrial or marine. Okay, then ex situ conservation, as I was talking to you, it is the preservation or conservation of species outside their natural habitats. So we bring them outside their habitats and we conserve them. For example, seed banks, cryopreservation, botanical gardens, zoological parks, aquaria, arboreta, home gardens, and sacred plants. So all this comes under ex situ. So these are the main two strategies which are followed in our country to avoid or to conserve species and avoid their extinction. Okay, so that is the strategies of conservation. Now, in situ conservation, where the species are conserved in their own habitats, we have national parks. The first example is a national park. So it is an area allocated to conservation of wildlife along with its environment in its natural habitat. So conservation in its natural habitat. It also meant for enjoyment through tourism, but without impairing the environment. So environmental loss will not happen here. So conserving it and tourism is also being allowed here. So that is what we call it as a national park. Each national park usually aims at conservation specifically of a particular species of wildlife along with others. So conservation of particular species in the wildlife along with others in a national park, it has been protected. Protection of everything, all the species as it is in their natural habitat. Overgrazing of domestic animals, all private rights and forestry activities are prohibited with national parks. So in a national park, overgrazing or any private rights or forestry activities are all prohibited because its main aim is to conserve the particular species which are on the verge of getting extinct in their own habitat, conserving them along with the other species in that particular forest. Okay. Next, wildlife sanctuaries. The next example is a wildlife sanctuary. You can see here, these is protected areas where killing, hunting or sharing or capturing of wildlife is prohibited except under the control of highest authority. So this is some killing or hunting or whatever, sharing or capturing of wildlife is been totally prohibited here also. This is also a forest, that is also national park is also a forest. But here what happens, the authority has some control. So except under the control of highest authority, all these things are prohibited. So I'll give you some examples also later on in my next slides. You can see around in our country especially, so all these comes under the wildlife sanctuaries. Next, biosphere reserves. So biosphere reserve is also a forest. Okay, it is a special category of protected areas where human population also forms a part of the system, because there are tribals living in a forest. They are an integral part of the forest. You cannot separate them from the forest areas. So hence here in a biosphere reserve, human population forms a part of the system. Humans are also an integral part of the system. They are large protected areas of usually more than 5,000 square kilometers. Very, very huge forest areas, which are, large areas these are. And especially this area, a biosphere reserve, is being divided into three parts. You can see here core zone, buffer zone, and the transition zone. In the picture also you can see here the innermost layer, whatever you are seeing in the dark colored part, is the core zone. The light color one is the buffer zone. Then the layer which is outside, you can see, that is the transition zone. So the forest area is being divided into three zones: the core, the buffer, and the transition zone. So just look into it, like what exactly happens in a core zone. Core zone is the inner zone, and this is undisturbed and legally protected area. The innermost part of the forest, or very inner part of the forest, we call it as a core zone, which is legally protected areas. It is completely, you can say, undisturbed part of the forest. Now we have the buffer zone. Buffer zone, it lies between the core zone and the transition zone. Some research and educational activities are permitted here. So in the core zone, the permissions are very, very limited. No permissions at all. Highly undisturbed part of the forest, we call it as a core zone. Now in the buffer zone, it lies between the core zone and the transition zone. So some research and educational activities are permitted in this particular zone. Next, the transition zone. It is the outermost part of the biosphere reserve. Here cropping, forestry, recreation, fishery, and other activities are allowed. So cropping is allowed here in this particular transition zone. Cropping allowed, forestry allowed, recreation allowed, fishery is allowed. Sometimes, the tribals construct their houses. So those things are also allowed in this particular transition zone. So biosphere reserve is a highly protected place, or you can say big forest spread over several acres of land, which has been divided into three parts. So the innermost layer we are calling it core zone, and buffer zone lies between the core and the transition zone. So the outermost layer we are calling it as a transition zone. Core is the innermost layer, highly undisturbed part of the forest. Then buffer zone, some educational activities and research activities are permitted in this particular zone. And transition zone, it is the outermost layer where cropping is allowed, some kind of forest activities are being allowed. So these three zones are, a part of biosphere reserves. So you can see in the picture clearly demarcated. It's been marked and the zones are specified for specific purposes. Next we come to ex situ conservation. So ex situ conservation, we have like seed bank, seed gene banks, and cryopreservation. So these are seed banks. What are the seed banks? Like we have normal banks here. We have a bank called seed bank where we preserve the seeds. So just look into this. These are cold shortages or storages where seeds are kept under controlled temperature and humidity for storage. And this is the easiest way to store the germ plasma of plants at very low temperatures. And seeds preserved under controlled conditions remain viable for long durations of time. So these are like cold storage banks, specially preservation of seeds have been conducted in this particular places. So these we can find them in the botanical garden especially. The storage areas, we usually find them in this botanical gardens where the seeds are stored at very, very low temperatures under very controlled conditions. They remain viable for long durations of time. Okay, that is a seed or a gene bank. Next, gene bank, if there is a demarcation, it is the variability also is preserved. Genetic variability is also preserved by gene bank under normal growing conditions. Okay, these are cold storages where germ plasm are kept under controlled temperature and humidity for storage. This is an important way of preserving genetic resources. So, genetic variability is also preserved by a gene bank under normal growing conditions. So, cold storages are also available here where the germ plasm is kept or stored under controlled temperatures and humidity, and this is an important way to preserve the genetic resources. Okay, that is a gene bank. Next, come to cryopreservation or cryopreservation. This is the newest application of technology for preservation of biotic parts. Okay, so this type of conservation is done at very low temperatures, especially like minus 196 degrees centigrade under liquid nitrogen. It has been stored and the metabolic activities of the organisms are suspended under low temperature, which are later used for research purposes. So cryopreservation is just like a lab, like the different parts, biotic parts are being stored at very, very low temperatures. It may be like minus 196 degrees centigrade in liquid nitrogen. It has been stored where the metabolic activities of the organisms are completely suspended at this low temperatures, and these are later can be used for research activities. So these, what I'm talking about, all this is about ex situ conservation, where we are talking about seed banks, gene banks, and we are talking about cryopreservation, storage of different parts at very, very low temperatures in liquid nitrogen. So that is ex situ conservation. Next, in ex situ, we have a few other things like long-term captive breeding. This is one particular method where it involves capture, maintenance, and captive breeding of on a long-term basis of individuals of endangered species which have lost their habitat permanently, or certainly highly unfavorable conditions are present in their habitat. So the term itself is long-term captive breeding. So the individuals are preserved for longer periods. Okay, and especially endangered species. They must have lost their habitat permanently or sometimes highly unfavorable conditions. Okay, these are present in their habitat. That is why they are brought outside their own habitats and they are preserved or conserved under long-term breeding, captive breeding. So this is the term used for the conservation of species for long terms. Okay, next, botanical gardens. So botanical garden is a place where flowers, fruits, and vegetables are grown. So botanical gardens provide beauty and calm environment. Most of them have started keeping exotic plants for educational and research purposes. So this is botanical gardens are known for the beauty, recreation, and all. Most important part of this botanical garden is they started keeping exotic plants for educational and research purposes. One way of preservation of exotic plants and and bringing that beauty to that particular place. So that is a botanical garden, which is one of the recreational activity also. Then zoological gardens or zoological parks, we call them as zoo. In zoos, wild animals are maintained in captivity and conservation of wild animals is being done here, especially endangered species. So they are captivated, they are brought to this particular areas and they are in controlled environment especially they check their reproduction also. They see that their number is growing in zoo. So that is what we mean by ex situ conservation, bringing those species or those individuals outside their natural habitat and giving protection to them so that their population doesn't decline. Okay, so this is zoological gardens. Next one, yes, sustainability is we call about if all these things are working together, so definitely there is sustainability in the environment. Yes, this we'll talk later. Biodiversity conservation it is also sustainability or sustainable development is directly linked to biodiversity conservation also. Okay, now some important national parks in our country. Let's look at them. Jim Corbett National Park, one of the oldest, first national parks in the country. Kaziranga National Park, Ranthambore, Sundarbans, Gir National Park, and you can see Kanha, Periyar National Park. All this Bandipur, Hemas National Parks, these are first 10 very important and the oldest national parks in the country, located in our own country. So, different, you can see different states they have been located, which provide conservation to biodiversity. Next, yes, these are some of the examples with pictures. Jim Corbett National Park, we all know tigers, and Sundarbans, Kaziranga National Park, Ranthambore, Periyar National Park, Gir National Park, located in different parts of our country, highly essential for protection of biodiversity. They are maintaining or helping the life to maintain on this earth. Very essential. They play a very important role in the conservation of biodiversity, especially in our country. Next. So these are the examples of wildlife sanctuaries. So we have very important sanctuaries: Kaziranga, Manas, Gir sanctuaries, Sundarban national parks, and some of them are national park and sanctuaries also. So what is the main difference between a national park and a sanctuary? National park, both flora and fauna, or the plants, the trees, as well as the animals are given importance. Both of them are conserved. But in a sanctuary, the primary importance is given to the conservation of animal category. So that is the main difference. Both of them conservation only, both of them are forests only, but there is a slight difference between a national park and a wildlife sanctuary. So these are some of the sanctuaries present in different parts of our country and also help to conserve biodiversity. Next, wildlife sanctuaries. Yes, in different parts of the country, you can see here different sanctuaries present. Definitely important for our sustenance. Then, in the ex situ conservation only, we have a topic called home gardens. So, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, or we are talking about biosphere reserves, all these are under the control of government. So government maintaining them, government captivating the species and they're maintaining. But home gardens is something which is specially to the individuals. It is limited to the individuals. So let us see what is this home gardens. The supporting food and nutritional security and providing other benefits also. So with the increasing world population, rising urbanization, decreasing arable land, so urbanization is increasing, then world population is increasing, then the arable land, the cultivable land is being decreasing, the weather extremes due to climate change, global agriculture is under pressure. So complete agricultural sector is under pressure. As it is rightly pointed out, the population is growing, urbanization is also rising, but there is a decrease of cultivable land. So that is the reason, and definitely there is a climate change. Extreme climate conditions also decreasing the food productivity. So in that pressure, in those kind of situations, home gardens have an important supporting role while responding to the challenges agricultural production is facing. So wherever we are facing the agricultural production, nowadays you can say it is fancy or people's interest, whatever, every house is having a small garden, small like 2 or 3 plants at least. Okay, so that is, it is responding to the challenges of agricultural production which is facing. And it is widely recognized that home gardens have multiple functions. So there are so many functions which the home gardens exhibit. They contribute to providing food, proper nutrition, medicine, and other useful products. And they fulfill social and cultural needs, being part of the traditional knowledge and practices while providing different ecosystem services, helping in mitigating climate change effects and contributing to economic needs and sustainable livelihoods. So, small medicinal plants, or in the home gardens, we started growing some food related plants, some medicinal related plants, some plants related to nutrition. We started growing some trees, some fruits, and we have herbs. We are growing them, medicinally important in our everyday food. So all this comes under home gardens. They are also supporting food and nutritional security and providing other benefits also. So these are it is understandable that attempts to further improve productivity of these widespread, often eco-friendly and culturally important and sustainable agricultural practices have been initiated. So home gardens also play an important role in maintaining ecosystem services. Next, sacred groups. It also comes under what they call ex situ kind of conservation. So these are sacred groves, or they are also called as forests. They are natural forests only, and they are protected by religious belief of the local people, and they act as treasure house of rare species of plants and animals. So natural forests protected by the locals. It may be the tribals who are protecting them. So that is what we mean by sacred groves. So natural forests only. Traditionally, sacred groves are common property resource systems associated with culture-based mode of conservation. Culturally, religiously, people are connected to that particular forest or those particular areas. Moreover, sacred groves hold the potential for preservation in terms of biological diversity, ecological functions, provides various ecosystem services, and cultural diversity. And a typical sacred grove ranges from clumps of few trees to few hectares in their size and are usually located in the proximity to human settlements. They're very nearby to the human settlements, and definitely these are being controlled by the locals. So religiously or emotionally, economically, they're attached to these particular forests. We call them sacred groves, and they act as treasure house of rare species of plants and animals. So this is one criteria or category which comes under ex situ conservation. Now, in our place, because I belong to Hyderabad, so in my city, so what are the different national parks present here? We have 3 national parks here. KBR National Park, Brugavani National Park, Mahavir Harina Vanasthali National Park. So 3 national parks in the city of Hyderabad. And KBR, one of the oldest one. So it is situated in Jubilee Hills, and rich flora and fauna provides a pleasant respite from the din and chaos of the city. So yes, so 3 national parks. Mrugwani National Park near Chilkur, on the highway. It is a good recreation spot, you can say. Many school children are being taken here, so they get an idea of the animals and the forest. That is Brugwani National Park. And yes, Mahavir Harina Vanasthali National Park located in the city. So yes, they are important, and definitely they play the important role in conservation of biodiversity in the city. Okay, these 3. Then botanical garden. I should talk about botanical garden of the city here. It is Sri Kotla Vijay Bhaskar Reddy Botanical Garden present in the city. This also plays an important role, especially for the students, for the children. When they want a recreation, a picnic spot for them, and lots of species are being preserved. Research activities are, they're very active in this particular places. So this is one, what we call the botanical garden present in the city. Conclusion: why conservation of biodiversity? Because it is paramount for sustaining life on Earth, maintaining ecosystem services, and supporting human well-being. So that is why it is important, and it is essential for maintaining ecological system of our planet. Rich biodiversity is a sign of healthy environment. So wherever we see that greenery, lots of life, definitely the environment is healthy. So that is conservation of biodiversity definitely helps in maintaining that healthy environment. Okay, then conservation of biodiversity is vital for the survival of human beings as well as other living beings on earth. So wherever we see this total greenery, total life, it's an healthy atmosphere, definitely supporting human well-being. Okay, that is the conclusion. And yes, these are some of the links available. So for any doubts, you can refer to these links. Yes, that's all for today. Let's meet with the next session. Thank you.